Welcome to Spoonful of Strength, a podcast for people with chronic illness and the ones who love them.
The compassion that you guys have really shines through.
Rachel and Tina cultivate a sense of comfort.
It was such a rewarding experience.
They were great hosts.
It was amazing. You are so kind.
Spoonful of Strength has given us this great platform.
They were so welcoming.
Here are your hosts, Rachel and Tina.
Welcome to this episode of Spoonful of Strength. We're happy to have you today. My name's Rachel. I am a MS warrior as well as a type 1 diabetic. And I'm here with my lovely sister-in-law, Tina.
I am Tina. I am a stage 4 cancer survivor and fibromyalgia and a few other things going on.
Yeah. We always have those other things we just don't even mention because it gets
frustrated. I know. I sound frustrated because I'm just so frustrated with my back right now and the sciatic pain right now because I had that injection last week and I had like a couple really good days, so I was hopeful, but the pain today has been like back, just not as severe. So I'm like, done.
So can they redo the injection or do they have to wait?
That I'm not sure. I think so. I go in a week from today, next Monday, for my 2-week post-op follow-up. And at that point, I'm not sure if we'll schedule another injection or if we're gonna do more imaging and talk about other options, which I would prefer. I'm hoping that another injection will work.
Yeah,
I don't have to be looking at. I would prefer not to look at back surgery because I got a lot of stuff coming up. But at the same time, I've also have bowed out of a lot of stuff over the last 6 weeks because of this. So I just want to get it fixed and get back to normal. So
yeah, you've been dealing with this long enough, but. Well, we're here today to talk about some tips for traveling with a chronic condition. We are nearing Christmas and where a lot of people will be traveling, and I will not be doing a lot of traveling. I think maybe I've got a 45-minute trip, which is plenty. Are you doing a lot of traveling, Tina, for Christmas?
No. We usually stay home. We don't usually, it's not often that we'll travel for Christmas. But also, again, a big factor right now is I've been doing no traveling for like the last 6 weeks because I can barely ride in the truck like 10 minutes down the road right now. So just the thought of trying to, there's, like we've talked on past episodes about the fly ball, my dog sport that I do. And there's a tournament in South Carolina this weekend that I'm having to miss. Like I haven't been to any tournaments since I was out there in October. With you at Can-Am in Indianapolis. I don't think I've been to another tournament since then. I love to travel. I'm usually a big traveler. I travel a lot. I'm usually gone at least one weekend a month, if not more. And no,
you bring up a good point as far as having to make the decision of even is traveling safe with your whatever your chronic condition might be. My family, we're looking at taking a vacation next summer, and I worry about making plans, and because I don't know where I'm going to be next summer. I don't know how I'm going to be feeling or if I'll be able to do the trip. And so when it comes to traveling, I think first of all, you have to make sure that you're completely able and willing to make the trip and making days beforehand and afterwards available so that you can refresh and recharge for the trip.
But you also equally have to be okay with the possibility of having to cancel that trip,
which is hard at Christmas time when family expects you to be there.
Right.
And especially if your family doesn't understand your chronic condition, there may be expectations of, well, you need to be here and you're not making the time for family and things like that. So it can be difficult, but
Yeah, it can be difficult. I guess maybe as I've dealt with enough stuff over the years that I was like, okay, if my family wants to get mad at me because I physically can't travel, then do I really, they're not the support that I need in my life. I'm not saying just cut them out, but it's like if they can't understand where you're coming from, why are you potentially putting yourself at risk? Or a bad flare up that's going to take you weeks to recover from, just to make somebody happy who won't even make the effort to understand what you're going through.
Yeah, they can be
I
tough
think I've
with-
gotten a little jaded in my old age.
Yeah. No, you're completely right. And I think the biggest part of traveling with a chronic illness is just the planning, whether it
Right.
be planning how long of a trip it is, how many days you're going to spend there, how far the drive is. We don't do a lot of traveling. We don't go on a lot of vacations. We're homebodies most of the time, but we did make a trip out to Arizona in April to see my stepson. And I really had a lot of anxiety about traveling because we were going to be far away. We live in Indiana. We were going to Arizona, and I'm a type 1 diabetic. I have my insulin pump pods that I have to change every 3 days. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to change it Sunday night. So then every 3 days, so that would be Wednesday night, I would have to change it again. So I'm going to bring one. And thank goodness I brought an extra one, because we landed in Arizona on Monday and my pod fell out. And so at that point, I was so glad that I brought an extra one. So it's a lot of planning and making sure that you bring extra supplies, extra things like that, because otherwise I would have been without an insulin pump for 24 hours, and that easily would have landed me in the hospital. So planning ahead, I think, is a huge one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it can be tough for some. Like I know, like you said, you struggle with traveling, of leaving your comfort zone.
Yeah.
I've been trying to convince you guys to come out. Like we're only an hour and less than an hour and a half away from Gettysburg, which I know my brother loves, Civil War history and things. So I keep trying to lure you out, but it is. But I understand, that it's a long drive, for you,
Yeah.
a 10-hour road trip that, and that is also another factor when you're considering traveling, is trips that you used to be able to do in a day or in 2 days' time, you may have to add an extra day and cut your travel days short. Like I used to be able to go from here out to you or out to mom's house. Mom's is a little further, so hers would be closer to 11-hour, an 11-hour trip, and I could get up at 6 a.m. and be rolling in at 6 or a little after I've done a few stops without even thinking about it. And now most of the time I divide it up into 2.
I think that's important. I don't travel by myself anymore. Aside from doctor's appointments that might be 20 minutes away, I just don't do it, because you never know when, your legs are going to go numb and you're not going to be able to drive, or I don't know. It's just getting to the point where I'm trying to move all my doctor appointments to a location closer to me, and I'm trying to do them on days spaced apart. And one of the other things that I did when packing was to bring just in case items, like whether that be like a heating pad, compression socks, helped me a lot with restless leg. For my diabetes, I had to bring extra snacks and drinks. I had to have a doctor's note so that I could pack food and drinks on my carry-on. just in case I had a low blood sugar. The amount of planning that goes into it is just crazy.
Right. And it shifts. I remember the first time I took a big trip after I finished my like I said, I do dog sports. I travel all the time by myself. Like, if I'll hop in the car and I'll go visit family. If Dave can't get away, I'll go away for a weekend for a dog sport event without even a second thought. But the first time I went away after all my cancer treatments, and I was gone for 2 weeks. I had it was a 10-day at Kripalu, which is the big, like, world-renowned yoga center in the Berkshires of Massachusetts. And I went to the Mindful Outdoor Guide training. So I knew it was going to be very intense, long days. And I was going by myself. And I really, really struggled with a lot of anxiety that I never really had when it came to traveling, at the thought of being away by myself. Like, okay, well, what if I get there and it's too hard for me? Because I wasn't even, that was in 2019. I was it was just under a year from my cancer diagnosis. So I was still pretty much recovering, kind of in that recovery mode from the chemo and the surgery. And I realized I had a lot of anxiety at the thought of not being there with Dave, my security blanket.
Yeah. Well, it's always good, if you can, to have somebody there with you that knows your medical background in case something would happen, that you pass out or you have a low blood sugar, anything like that somebody that knows how to care for you. I have never used it. Like I said, we don't travel very often, but I do know that airports and airlines do have services where they can come get you at your car, and they bring a wheelchair and they take you through security and they take you everywhere that you need to go. And that, I think, would be so beneficial for those that have fatigue, or, like me, I use my cane everywhere I go, but I'm struggling a lot with fatigue. And so to be able to have that service that can save some spoons, so to speak. I don't know how easy that is, but I'm assuming that would be, just contacting the airport and arranging that.
We've used it for Dave's mom when she's flown, as she's gotten older and it's harder to walk so far through the airport. And it's super easy. And actually, whoever drops you off at the airport, they could park, and they would give them a pass to let them through. Like, if you were going somewhere by yourself, but you needed assistance to at least get you up to the gate, in addition to an attendant with the wheelchair, they will give, your caretaker a pass as well to make it through security and at least get you settled at the gate. And, I believe they can even stay there until, you're loaded on the plane and then take off. So those are, a funny story. I remember my mom talking about the last time she flew. She was like, this is going to be the last time. It's too hard for me to walk. This was just a couple of years ago. And, she's going to be 93 in a little over a month now. And I told her, I was like, Mom, we did this with Dave's mom. Or I said, no, I said, we can arrange a wheelchair. They can transport you. And her response was that was for old people. So,
that sounds like her.
Yeah. And then I told her, I said, well, Dave's mom did it. And so then she was willing to do it, because they're only a year apart. Like, his mom is a year younger than Mom. So when I said, well, we did that with Dave's mom, then she's like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll try it. But now she's not going to fly anymore.
Yeah.
Because she doesn't want to get the upgraded driver's license to allow her to fly.
Speaking of wheelchairs, if you are in a wheelchair or need to travel with a wheelchair, that also is something you want to do a little bit of research ahead of time on, making sure that they can transport the wheelchair.
Or if you're driving somewhere and you're staying somewhere else, you want to make sure, most places anymore have are pretty accessible, but you definitely need to make sure, do the groundwork of, if you all are going out to a big dinner somewhere, a family dinner outside, or, at a restaurant or something like that, the research needs to be done as far as the accessibility factor of it.
Yeah, I haven't experienced that yet, but I know that's important. You don't want to be traveling everywhere trying to find something that's accessible for a wheelchair. But did you ever have problems with jet lag when you travel?
Yeah, and that was before I even went through everything. Now, when we went to Japan last year, it was tough when we got home, but we also both were, I think the jet lag was made worse because we both came home with RSV from Japan. So I was able to sleep most of the way home.
Oh, that's
and I can't remember, they say, I think I was reading about this with jet lag, and I thought it was saying when you're changing time zones, if you're going back in time, like from the East Coast here, flying to the West Coast, you don't suffer as much jet lag because you're essentially gaining hours.
Mm-hmm.
It's that coming back where you're losing hours, kind of like that spring forward, fall back. Like, you're just so tired. I thought after this time change, a month or so ago, I thought I was never going to get my energy back. I was so tired I'm like, it was only an hour. like I only lost an hour.
Yeah.
Why am I so exhausted?
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of jet lag when you went out to Arizona?
It was the first day was horrible, but I don't think it was the jet lag as much as we got on the flight at 8 a.m. Indiana time, and we arrived at like 9 a.m. Arizona time because of the time change. And so then, we get settled, and then we had a dinner that night, and I don't eat dinner. I can't eat lots of food in the evening time. The dinner was like at 6 o'clock, which was like 9 o'clock to,
Right.
how we were feeling. And I'm normally in bed at 10, asleep by 11. And that dinner went until I think 8:30, and we were exhausted. And so it was more so, I don't think it would have been as bad as if we had gotten there, been able to rest and like just chilled the first day, but it was such a long day. We felt it on the way back, more so. But again, I think our flight was at 9 and we didn't get home until like 5:30.
Right.
Even though the flight was
because
only
of time
3
change.
hours. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then how did you manage, being diabetic? Obviously, you're probably somewhat structured with your meals, and then you're trying to, you're somewhere where there's a 3-hour time difference.
Yeah, that was really hard because when the insulin pumps that we live with nowadays have the CGM, so I can at any moment look at my watch or my phone and see what my blood sugar is. And it gets into rhythms where it knows kind of your body's natural cycle. And so then like there's times where when I got a steroid shot in my shoulder, it messed up my blood sugars. It took a long time for the insulin pump to understand what was happening. And by the time it adjusted everything, then it had worn off, and then it had to readjust to my normal fluctuations anyway. So I was dealing with more so lows than highs because I wasn't eating at the same time that my body was normally eating. Even if I was eating at the same time, with the time difference, it was way off. And so it was a little bit of making sure I had extra, glucose tablets, extra test strips, and extra snacks, and really just trying to kind of always be checking that and always be eating, snacks or adjusting eating, in general. But yeah, that can be really difficult because that even takes stress, affects the blood sugars and the traveling and all of that. And so that was tricky. But after 25 years, I'm kind of used to figuring it out. I was more so concerned with the traveling for the MS, more so than the diabetes. I mean, that was more of a anxiety for me. Join Spoonful of Strength on Instagram, a community open to everyone. Whether you have a chronic illness or support someone who does, you are welcome at Spoonful of Strength. You'll get preview clips of the upcoming episodes and insight into my world as a spoonie. That's Spoonful of Strength, Spoonful with 2 L's, on Instagram.
We asked our Instagram followers, what tips do you have for traveling with a chronic illness? And Aligned K8, which we've already talked a little bit about this too, said wheelchair assistance has been a game changer.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely don't. I think that some people actually have, they are hesitant to want to use those.
Yeah, I am. I probably should have in April done that. And because waiting in line in security was hard. I have a hard time standing when I'm, I actually do better when I'm walking versus standing. So yeah, that's probably something I think even Ed said we should do. And I was like, oh no, I'll be fine. Everything will be great. Yeah. We had another response that we wanted to share from RL Wellness DC. And she said, packing cubes help keep everything organized and saves me spoons. So that goes back to kind of what we were talking about, just being organized and making sure everything has a place. And I know for me, I made more than one list. I made list of list, just making sure that every day I had everything that I needed, because you don't want to be stuck away from home and not have the essentials that you need. What about for people who are driving to family or friend's house? What are some things that would help with the travel aspect of being in a car driving for long distances that would help with chronic illness?
I think one thing it would be I said more frequent breaks.
Yeah.
Don't be and I'm guilty about this too. I was like, okay, I got to drive 11 hours. Let's see if I can do this with only like 3 breaks. But then the problem is when I'm driving by myself, I drink a lot, like coffee and, caffeinated beverages. So then I have to stop more. So then I'm like, I got to do it at 4. But I mean, there's no rush. You'll get there when you get there. It's you're not riding the track at the Indy 500 to try to win.
Yeah. I'm glad you specified that you're drinking water or pop or all of that.
Yeah. I'm just drinking the whole way there. Yep. Yeah, definitely. I have gotten to be okay with more breaks for myself. But not just that. Like I know, my van has heated seats. And when my back starts bothering me, I love hitting on my heated seats. If you have a car that doesn't, they make those heated car seat, like you can just strap them to the back of your seat and plug them into the cigarette lighter. So, even if your car doesn't have one, you can add one to it if whatever you are struggling with, whatever you're going through, if heat helps. Lots of just make sure you keep hydrated.
Yeah. And I think bringing extra pillow for your back, if your back is hurting, or a blanket just so that you can get some rest. I deal with stiffness a lot of muscle stiffness. And so, like you said, taking the extra break is good for me to be able to stretch, because otherwise if I go more than an hour or so, then I can barely get out of the car. And
Right.
so I think it's just knowing your body and knowing what you need and not pushing it. I think we're all guilty of pushing beyond our means when it comes to, like you said, traveling. You just want to get there. You want to not have to stop 10 times. And but if you can do it safely to where you can take the breaks and you can feel better once you get to your destination, then I think that is a better route to go. If you're scheduling a long trip, then I would definitely recommend not setting every day up with an activity, or not setting up full day activities for many of the days, and schedule in. When we traveled, we went to Tennessee a couple years ago, and I made sure that we had a cabin that had a full kitchen, and I got groceries delivered to the cabin. And I said, we're going to be home by this time, and we're going to eat dinner at the cabin so we don't have to pay for expensive restaurants. And then, if the kids want to do something, they can do, they can do whatever, but we were going to stay in. And so that we kind of planned our day that by this time we were going to be back at the cabin, and be able to relax a little bit. We could play games, we could, watch movies, things like that. But the physical aspect of it kind of stopped at a certain point. And the kids still had a great time. So it's a lot about planning. I think probably we've said planning more than anything, but I think that is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. And like I said earlier, just be okay with either arriving, going, adjusting if you have to. If you're like, okay, well, I plan on doing this in 2 days drive, but if you have to make more stops and you realize you're not going to do it, be okay with stopping a second night on the road, or waking up in the morning that you're going to leave and realize that you're not up to, okay, especially if you're driving, airplane, flying could be a little more trickier, but most airlines are pretty good about rebooking your flights if you need to. So there's nothing, unless you're trying to get somewhere because it's a family emergency, there's really nothing more important than taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And even adjusting the dates. I think we were looking at going on vacation next summer. We were originally looking to go, we were looking originally like 5-7 days. And I think we've narrowed it down to maybe 3 nights, 4 days, and trying to do a little bit less, but still having the overall experience of getting away and spending time together without completely putting you into a flare. And of course, it's always good if you have access to like your insurance's network to find some doctors, hospitals, and things like that are within your network wherever you're traveling. So if there is an emergency, then you know where to go for coverage and things like that. Pharmacy, what pharmacy can I get to that if I needed to, I could transfer a prescription over and get that filled. Those are always great tips as well.
We've talked about all things travel, and now we're going to welcome in Chloe, and she is going to share her journey she has multiple illnesses. So she has Chiari, syringomyelia, POTS, HEDS, FND. And so she's going to join us and share her story of everything that she has been going through.
Welcome, Chloe, to the podcast. We're so happy that you're here with us today to talk about your chronic illnesses. Why don't we start out by having you tell us a little bit about yourself and introduce yourself to our listeners?
Okay. It's a long story. I could write like books on this. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm the only one in my family that's sick, so it kind of makes my mom feel guilty, but can't do anything about it. I have Chiari malformation, syringomyelia, functional neurological disorder, POTS, ADS, asthma, and tethered cord.
Okay.
And I just
Where are
had
you
my ninth. I'm originally from Utah, but we last lived in Nevada. But now I'm in Australia.
Very cool. Do you like Australia?
Give me 1 second.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's really pretty, and the medical system is a lot better here. I just had surgery last Wednesday for my spinal cord stimulator. So that's my 4th surgery this year. Because of my EDS, my battery for the stimulator has moved down a lot. So in February he repositioned it. Then in March he swapped it to the other side. March. The 3rd one he had to take it out because it was infected and I could have gotten sepsis. And then Wednesday he put it back in.
Oh my goodness. You poor thing.
I have a lot of complications with things, but and I haven't had to pay for any of them. The insurance, like the system here is a lot better. And it's worth a lot of money, like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Did you have to fight to get any of the treatments or surgeries or anything that are needed?
No, I haven't. My pain doctor, he also does the surgeries, so that's really cool. He's one of the best doctors I've had, because I've had a lot that dismiss me or don't believe me or just don't care. And he's really good, and he listens, and yeah, he's really good. And because I had to try the ketamine lozenges again that I tried in 2019. He wanted to see if they would help. It's like giving candy to a baby. So when I saw him 2 weeks ago, he's like, "You want me to put it back in?" I said, "Yeah." He's like, "Okay, I'll do that." He's really good.
And what was he putting back in?
My spinal cord stimulator.
Okay. And what does that do?
It helps the chronic pain. It helped maybe like 40%. So it like you have wires in your back, like alongside your spinal cord, and then it sends electrodes through your body. So I have to used to be I have to charge my butt, but he moved it to my side because it would move down too many times on my bum. So he moved it on my side. Then I have to charge it, and then they have reps that do different programs for you. So the remote has like 5 different programs, and they can do so many different programs on one level.
Sounds like it's like it's a TENS machine, similar to a TENS machine, only
yes,
but it's
implanted permanently on you, and it's a lot more effective.
Gotcha.
And without it, I was like crying in pain almost every day, which hasn't happened in a very long time.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's good.
I mean, it's still bad, but I sobbed in pain every day until I got it back in.
Tell me when everything started. When did you go from a healthy young girl to you started seeing problems?
When I was 6, because I had a lot of behavioral issues, and we think it's because I couldn't express myself. So at 6, they were doing like an MRI to check, your emotions, so they can do that. But then they discovered I had Chiari at 6. And then I've been in and out of like psych ward since I was 6, but it's been over a year since I haven't been in, which is good. And because I had like tantrums that were like 19 and a half hours once in the hospital, and they had to date me and everything. And we think it's basically because I didn't know how to express myself being in pain all the time at such a young age. So, and then because I'm one of 6, and when a child acts up, they're being abused, which is not true. But because my parents got threatened to take me away if they didn't do parenting classes. Have you seen the documentary Take Care of Maya on Netflix?
I have
No.
not.
That is literally my life, but 10 years more experience and still going. Like, it's literally the exact same thing, but she's 18 and I'm 28.
Now, was this all when you were 6? Were you in the States at that time, or were you in Australia?
We moved here when I was 11. So I had my Chiari decompression surgery when I was 15, so 2012. And I'm part of the 20% that get worse, and then the 80% get better. And then I have the the bubbles in my spine from syringomyelia, so that makes it worse too. But after my surgery, the biggest one shrunk in half, which is good, but the damage was already done.
When did you get diagnosed with the POTS, the heads, the F&D? When did that all come about?
So F&D was probably like 3 years ago, 3, 4. POTS was maybe 5. I'm not officially diagnosed with HEDS, but because there's not a lot of information on things here, and there's so many different types of EDS, and it's just I'm so flexible, and the reason all the batteries have moved because people with EDS, their skin is extra stretchy, so that's why I've had a lot of complications with it.
I never thought about the spinal stimulators. Right now, I'm like in about an hour, I'm going to be leaving for a spinal injection because I've been dealing with some pain.
It's
so I'm
me.
just like, yeah, it helped a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like 40, like it still gets bad, but it's better than nothing.
Than what it was. Right. Yeah. A little bit of relief is better than no relief at all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how, it can be difficult just to get a diagnosis of a chronic illness, but you have, as you've, you continually are getting diagnosed with different things, kind of one after another. Tell us a little bit about how your mental health has been through all of that.
Well, because since I was 6 in America, they diagnosed me bipolar because of all my anger and my tantrums. Then we moved here and they undiagnosed me with that. And then over the years, I got borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, complex PTSD, OCD. Like it just kind of just all lines up because they all kind of connect. So like the POTS and the F&D are they comorbid with Chiari and syringomyelia as well. Kind of just got to do your own research, I guess. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when I was a baby, I think I was like maybe like I don't know, I was like a baby and I would stop breathing because people with Chiari like cough, laugh, or sneeze, I would pass out when I was a teenager, and they said it was all behavioral and that I'll grow out of it. Everything is like blame behavioral.
Yeah, when the child throws the temper tantrum and hold their breath till they like pass out. So that's where that basically is what they were.
Yeah, because if they don't know much about it, then they just, they'll just label it as a mental illness.
A behavior, yeah.
When I went to the children's hospital here to have my brain surgery, so I had to stay there for months at a time. Then because we lived in a mining town 7 hours away, then I had to go back at the end of each month for rehab and stuff. And then I had to go in for 3 months to see this pain psychologist. I have trust issues, and he's the one that has messed it up more. He convinced my neurologist that I was faking my pain, even though he saw through my bones and officially diagnosed me with my syringomyelia. When because there's like this teenage thing called Livewire. It's like has games in a kitchen, and he goes, "How can she be all happy there and then come back to her hospital room and start crying in pain?" You're a psych. Distraction was the main techniques,
Right.
And then eventually my neurologist apologized, which I couldn't look him in the eye. I was pissed. Then he diagnosed my mom with Munchausen's by proxy. And then we found out Munchausen's is also in my file. So that's great. If you watch Take Care of Maya, that is literally explains everything as well.
Okay.
Definitely have that this afternoon.
While you're on your phone, come on, I know it's in your hand. Head on over to Spoonful of Strength's Etsy shop at spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com. That's spoonful with 2 L's. We have a wide variety of t-shirts, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, and so much more. Anything in the shop can be customized based on your illness. We have sizes from extra small to 5X and many colors to choose from. The best part is most items ship within 2 business days. So head on over to spoonfulofstrength.etsy.com.
Yeah. Tell me now, like how the mental diagnoses, do they affect you on a daily basis?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm constantly, because the borderline personality, because bipolar is when you can be depressed for weeks. BPD is when you can go from happy to depressed and then back down. which happens. I mean, because after they took out the stimulator, I was really depressed after that because it was my main source of pain relief. And then, because I've been in and out of psych ward since I was 6. I've been taking pills since I was 6 because I was just acting out a lot, and it was just assumed it was psychological. Well, I mean, it turned out to be eventually. Because, yeah, you're just always in pain. And I guess as a toddler, I didn't know how to express myself.
Right.
Sure.
That makes sense. You didn't know what's going on and why you're feeling the way you were. So, yeah, I mean, gosh, I've been dealing with this back issue for like the last 5 weeks with no relief. And I know that I'm grumpy, I'm depressed, and as an adult, at least I can express that. But I can't imagine being that young and just trying to not knowing what to do.
But my mom has fought for me for everything to the point where literally people thought she was making it up or blah, blah, blah. And then when I had my brain surgery, I almost had an infection. I could have gotten, paralyzed. And the mining town hospital we went to, they're like, oh, but she had spine surgery, when clearly I had my scar on the back of my head. They didn't know anything. They're horrible.
It's so frustrating. Do you find that your chronic illnesses, like when one flares up, something else will flare up? Do they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Especially, my mental health as well.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like a bombshell all at once.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's, I think, the common thread between a lot of people with chronic illness is just the mental load of dealing with being in pain every day. And I don't think anybody who doesn't have a chronic illness can really understand how that takes a toll mentally. Because
eventually you have to just suck it up, and you don't get used to it, but you don't cry as often as you do.
Yeah.
And then, you have to prove to people sometimes that you're in pain because you don't look like it,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. You get into that, you just learn to hide it because you don't want to feel like you're bringing everybody else down. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm one of 6, and I was a horrible child because of all my tantrums and everything. So it wasn't great, but my mom has done everything for all 6 of us. I mean, my dad provided the money, but money's not always everything, especially mentally.
Right. Where do you fall in the lineup of 6?
I'm number 4.
Number 4.
Everyone is 2 years apart, and then me and my sister are 5 years apart, and then my little brother, they're 2 years apart.
Are they all still local to where you are now, or?
So slowly, my older siblings moved back to America, but now it's just the younger 3, including me, that are here. Mm-hmm. And because the medical system here is a lot better and disability pension is better, I don't have to pay for MRIs, I don't have to pay for my surgeries, even my brain surgery or anything.
Well, that's great. That takes a big load off of your plate and your mom's plate of dealing with the financial struggles as well.
And because my dad owes my mom $35,000 in child support, he's like a narcissist. He doesn't think she deserves it or needs it. She lives 3 hours away from me in the middle of the bush here. She doesn't have to worry about rent, but they're building a house as well. And because she's also on a pension as well, she has a lot of anxiety, arthritis, her asthma gets really bad. And sounds like she's a smoker, but she's not. She was up here with me today, Saturday, and left today.
Oh, that's good. Obviously, you're recovering from surgery, but on a typical day, how does the pain and all of the illnesses affect you on a daily basis? Working? Are you?
No, I'm on a pension. No, I'm on disability pension.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I worked at a grocery shop here, and I also worked in a daycare, but I just couldn't do it all the time because even I couldn't stay at school most of the time. And I was also in and out of the children's hospital for months. I would have to travel down 7 hours there, stay for a week, come back, and then do that every month. I didn't graduate high school, which frustrates me, but I just physically couldn't do it.
It's hard as as we're talking about these pain levels and stuff. It's just like it's amazing how when you're in that pain that nothing is breaking through, how much that affects you cognitively.
And I'm very immune. Like I've been on every pain medication you can think of, like even the ones people don't know about. Or when I was a teenager, they worked for a little bit and then stopped. So I have a vape with THC in it, which helps me.
Mm-hmm.
And after the surgery, I get ketamine lozenges, so that knocks me out for a little bit. Everything else, I don't. I mean, I'm on Plexia Tapentadol, but that only helps my surgical pain. I took that when I was a teenager as well, and it didn't help my chronic pain. So right now, my main source is my weed, my vape, and my THC in there.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Over in Australia, is that only medical use, or is that?
Yeah, you have to have a prescription. I know people like grow it and stuff, but it's a script.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have the candy one sometimes because that's very common in America. Just get some gummy bears or something.
Gummies, yes, that's what I take a high dose gummy at night to be able to sleep. So,
but I mean, I have it, which is good.
Yeah. Circle back to Rachel's question as far as we talked about you not being able to work. So when you're not recovering from surgery, what is your daily life like? How do you have others that come and help you out? Are you pretty self-sufficient?
I have support workers.
Okay.
Yeah, I have support workers. They come in. Mm-hmm. I did have 24/7 support, but then my funding got cut because it's called NDIS, National Disability Independence, something services or whatever, but you have to prove a lot to them. Like I've lost money because, first of all, they've gotten really bad. They don't care. I have my psychologist. She's a neuropsych and she knows a lot about FND. She has a client who is paralyzed from the neck down and they cut her night staff. Like how can it's just, that's how it is here. I mean, it's better than America, but you have to prove it. And because I don't look like it and we have to prove it, and it's just very judgmental. But I mean, it's better than nothing and it helps, And the company I'm with, she's like my mom because I was her first client and she built it around me. So she's like my mama. And then now my sister works in the office, which is good too, I've employed a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Good. Now you mentioned FND. Tell me what symptoms you have with the FND.
My seizures mainly because they're non-epileptic. So like I will convulse for over an hour and then I stop breathing, but then my stats are normal. And that's why people think they're psychological. But then like sometimes my mouth will twitch or I cramp up to where I can't walk and I get as hard as rock, or my brain fog. It's a mixture of the Chiari and the FND together. Like I had it before my mom left and it's like I'm in and out of consciousness and I like can't like keep my eyes open. And then I like talk and then I forget and it's not great.
How often do you have these seizures?
I haven't had one in a while, but I used to have like 5 to 6 a day. Like I would convulse. They look like an epileptic one. I would convulse and throw out my mouth, or I would usually stare. And then my sister would be like, Mom, Chloe's going to have a seizure because I become I don't talk back. I just sit there and stare. And then they kind of lay me down or make sure I have a pillow under my head or something. Like after my last surgery in September, I had an hour seizure after the surgery. And because my stats are normal, but the hospital did a very good job. They did a code every time I had one, which means they believed me. But I've been told my whole life they're fake, they're psychological. So whenever I have one, I always think, did I make myself have it? It's like a reflex.
It sounds like they put a lot of self-doubt into your, sounds like they're making you question those. Are there certain triggers that you have found that brings them on?
When I've done too much for my body. I mean, sometimes they're random, but like, because, when with chronic pain, if you're going to do something fun, you're going to suffer extra the next day or week or whatever. So when I go, like I went to a concert, like a couple weeks ago, but my sister comes with me because I have this, it's called a companion card. You only have to pay for one ticket. You get 2 tickets for the price of one for everything here.
Nice.
But I've had one before at the concert, but then it just depends. It can come randomly, but also how much I've pushed my body or because my surgery. I haven't had one yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if one had happened.
Do you use mobility aids? Are you like a depends on the day, or how do you get around?
It depends on the day. Like if I go for long distances, I have a walker that also turns into a wheelchair, which is very handy. But if short distances, I'm fine. But if my pain is bad, I'm usually at home anyways, but I have my walker for long distances or going to the mall or something.
Yeah. When you're dealing with multiple illnesses, what would be a piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's dealing with multiple illnesses? I am kind of there with you. I have type 1 diabetes, MS, asthma. I've got some other things going on, and it can be very overwhelming. So what piece of advice would you give somebody that is in the midst of dealing with so much every day?
Try not to push yourself to prove to others that you should do things that you shouldn't be doing. Because, you just do it to prove to them that you can do it. But then, because they just assume, how do I explain this? It's hard to explain sometimes how to explain all of this. Because people judge you, and it used to get me a lot. But at times, if they argue with me, I'm going to argue back. Like it's older people that just assume, like, because when I don't have my walker, even I still get dirty looks. And they look at me up and down or ask, why you in the disabled parking? Or I got a lady escorted out at the toilets at the cinema. And I just don't understand. There's so many judgmental people because you don't look it. And so people just assume. I'm like, do I need to show you all my scars, But
yeah,
some people you can't help. You just got to try, not push yourself, and try not to let other people's stupidity and judgmental comments get you. It can be hard, but you kind of just got to suck it up sometimes.
That can be frustrating.
Yeah. The hard part is staying outside of your own head sometimes. And
and my brain's never quiet either because of all that goes on, and it's just never quiet. That's why when I got put under, me and my friend joked because I'm best friends with this girl I went to the hospital with, but she was there for mental illness, but she also has scoliosis. We have very dark humor. Like we'll talk about medical trauma and be like, nah, that's just because we went through that. Or I don't know, we have very dark humor, but my whole family is based off of sarcasm, I guess. Like we quote movies or TV shows or whatever. But
yeah, sometimes you got to put humor in it because it is overwhelming at times. And
it'll give you more
so
having
having a good sense of humor.
So I appreciate you joining us.
Thank you. I'm just laying in bed anyways. All I do at home, I've watched so many movies and TV shows this year because I've become more limited. And so it's like I don't have a life, but people think it's fun just to stay at home and do nothing when it's not. It's depressing. It's not. I mean, if you work all the time, then yes, but when you got to do nothing, it's not that fun. It kind of frustrates you.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. But definitely, it's not nothing, people don't understand is us resting. We're taking care, we're recharging ourselves. We are letting our bodies heal. And that's really important. So, but yes, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me.
She's been through a lot.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that could have been, there are a lot of things that could have been difficult to open up. So I definitely appreciate, how open she was with everything.
Yeah. Especially, I mean, a lot of people deal with more than one illness, and it really is difficult to try and manage, 4 or 5 things at once. So
yeah. And it's had to been frustrating to try to manage trying to find answers, and they're blaming it all on mental health versus digging into like the physical aspects of what was going on for her.
Yeah, that can definitely be difficult. A lot of times dealing with multiple chronic illnesses can affect your mental health quite a bit. And so to feel like you're being gaslit and that everything's just in your head is so terrifying when you know your body and you know something's wrong.
Thank you all for joining us this week on our podcast. Please tune in next Tuesday when our next episode drops, and we will be chatting a bit at first about finding your purpose through your chronic illness. And then Tim will be joining us, and he's going to be sharing his journey with Crohn's disease. And he's going to talk about his website, which is invisiblecondition.com. So please tune in next week with us and have a wonderful rest of the week.